Hey guys, welcome to a weekly question video. If you want to leave us a question, details on how to do that is down below, as well as a link to our Patreon. If you want to dive deeper into the topic of domestic discipline, get a ton of bonus content, and support what we're doing here, the best place to do that is over on Patreon. Otherwise, just like this video, leave us a comment, subscribe if you're not already. All of those things really do help us out. And without further ado, let's get into this week's question. So somebody asked me what our rules are around respect and what are some of the things that I'm expected to do specifically in regards to respect. So I thought I would just go through our rules, talk through what the expectations are, and talk through kind of what the consequences are. So respect is one of the most important aspects of our relationship. I think it's one of the most important aspects of any good relationship, especially a domestic discipline relationship where you have this hierarchy, you have the head of household holding authority. And so in order to have a successful domestic discipline relationship, you have to show your head of household that you respect them. And so Coda definitely holds respect as the most important thing in our relationship. It is the very first pillar in our pillar system. It outranks everything else because he really wants to ensure that the respect in our relationship is intact, and he actually has a very high expectation of my respect. And so I'm going to go through our rules. We have all of our rules written down, and all of our rules are in categories of our pillars. And so I'm going to go through the rules specifically around the pillar of respect because it is the most important. The vast majority of these rules would result in punishment. And so I'm not going to go through. I will point out if something's not a punishment. So if I don't say what the consequence is, it's a punishment. The vast majority of these rules do result in punishment because they are that important, because without respect, our entire system falls apart, and really respect can really undermine and become very detrimental to our relationship if it's not intact. And so that's why Coda holds a very high level of expectation around respect, and that's why he is so quick to punish disrespectful behavior. So the first rule I have is that I'm expected to speak softly and kindly. This means no yelling, no arguing, no back talk, no aggressive tones. So the next rule is speaking with respect. This means that I'm supposed to address Coda as sir, saying yes sir or no sir when we are talking, when I am answering direct questions, when we are having conversation. And this is something that he would potentially do a correction for if it's something that I was simply forgetful of. Now, if I have an attitude or if there's a reason I'm not calling him sir, then that might be a punishment, but this is listed under a correction because if it's just something that I've been forgetful of, then he will do a correction just to remind me that that is an expectation and I need to be more mindful. I'm also supposed to use proper words and phrasing. That's part of speaking respectfully. And so again, that would be a correction if it's something that I'm just not being mindful of and he wants to bring it to my attention that I need to be more mindful. So my next rule is speaking with integrity. This means that I am not to have any sass or pouting or negative intentions behind my words. This is definitely communicated through tone, and so Coda is very, very aware of my tone. That's something that he pays a lot of attention to. He also wants me to be truthful and sincere in my words and in my speech. He also doesn't want me to say things like I'm fine or it's okay and just kind of be dismissive when he's asking me something, when he's asking me a direct question. I can't be dismissive. I have to be very honest and forthcoming with how I'm feeling, especially if I need to communicate something important to him. He wants me to speak with intention. So speaking with intention means that I'm supposed to maintain a pleasant tone, facial expression, body language, Basically, my overall demeanor just needs to be respectful when I'm communicating with him. I'm not to interrupt him while he is speaking. Now, that's kind of a given during moments of discipline, but even during casual conversation, this is an expectation. He expects me to ask questions with proper wording. That means that when I ask a question, it is asked as a sincere question. I'm asking permission. I'm not asking his confirmation. I'm not wording the question in a way that kind of gives him what I expect the answer to be. I am genuinely asking a question for him to make a decision, and it's worded properly in order to communicate that. And I'm not to mumble or talk under my breath. So those are all things that go into speaking with intention. When Coda stops a conversation, I am to stop speaking immediately. I am to listen with the intention of receiving instructions. I'm to obey those instructions immediately. And any attempt that I make to continue the conversation, to finish my thought process or finish my phrasing, anything like that would be considered disrespectful and unacceptable and would be punished accordingly. I am to defer to Coda to make decisions for our relationship and for our household. And so that means that I'm not to act outside of his authority, that if I have a question, I need to ask it as a question. I need to ask his permission, and I really do need to defer to him to be the decision maker for myself, for our relationship, for our family, for our household. I am not to question his decisions or try to change his decisions. I'm not to assume what his decision is going to be. I always have to ask and confirm that I understand the direction, that I understand the expectation. I am not to make plans without permission. I am to ask before going places. This is a really big one. Under our safety rules, I actually have to communicate to him when I am going places and when I arrive and when I leave and all of those things. That is one of the rules that he really does value. So this is definitely one that he holds very highly, that I am not to go anywhere without asking and getting permission first. Immediately accept no with respect. I don't know if you're anything like me, but I don't like being told no. And it was something that I really struggled with in the past, and it's something that I can still struggle with if I'm not being super mindful, to really accept and respect when Coda tells me no. When no is his decision, I need to accept that. And if I pout about it, if I get upset about it, if I start having an attitude because he told me no, that would definitely be something I would be punished for. I need to honor Coda's authority. And so what that looks like in our relationship is responding immediately when he calls. This really is referring to if we're in the home together and he calls out for me, I need to go to him and be in the same room with him, see what he needs, and respond appropriately. I need to prioritize Coda's preferences. So what that means is that if I know that he has a preference on something, I try to fulfill that within my ability as much as I can. And so that's really just making him a priority and putting him at the forefront of my mind. Supporting Coda's decisions as if they are my own. This takes supporting his decisions, living under the authority of his decisions one step further, and really says, I'm going to support that as if it was my decision. If that's actually what I wanted to do, I'm going to support it in the same way that I would support it as if it were something that I had thought of and that I wanted to do first. And so he really does expect that level of support from me for his decisions. Really assuming that he is in the right. And that's not to say that I can never point out or never bring any type of concern to him, but it's really just not accusing him of not knowing what he's talking about, not accusing him of doing things wrong, not accusing him in any sort of way. It's really just to assume that the best in him and just to assume that he is right and that he does know better. fulfill the role of being Coda's helper. So that just means like doing things to help him. So there might be some instances where there are rules for things that are a direct help to him, like making his lunch, like making sure that he has what he needs, like prioritizing his needs when I am doing certain things. But really, fulfilling my role as his helper is also takes the form of giving him my input and opinion, giving him my perspective, making sure that he has the information that he needs in order to make decisions. Also, the little things that I do that are not necessarily rules, but they are certainly helpful. Making sure that, I'm just thinking of little ways that I can help him throughout the day, throughout his day, and doing what I can. And so I need to keep the idea that my position, my role is to help him in the forefront of my mind. And he wants me to really be aware of that and be thinking of that. He doesn't want me questioning his integrity or his personhood. It's just disrespectful if I don't treat him like he has integrity in the relationship, because as my head of household, I would not trust him, I would not respect him, and I would not be under his authority if he did not have integrity. And so when I call into question his integrity, it is disrespectful, and it is something that he doesn't want me doing. When Coda walks into the room, he really does want me to at least make eye contact with him and have a pleasant expression on my face. Now, this is something that if he were to call me out for it, it could potentially be a correction. He's not going to punish me because I didn't make eye contact with him, but it's just respectful to acknowledge that he came into the room and just to look happy to see him. And so that's just to maintain kind of the good vibes, if you will, between us. So the next rule is that Coda wants me to be a positive example of his leadership, of his authority to others. And so what that looks like is starting in the home. He wants me to be a positive example to our child about how a wife is to treat and interact with her husband. My behavior really should communicate to our child the level of respect and honor that a wife should be exhibiting towards her husband. And so he really wants me to make sure that, especially when our child is around, that I am showing him through my behavior, through how I speak to him, through my demeanor, through my expressions, that I respect him, because our child is picking up on those things and they're really important. He wants me to be kind to others. He really wants me to show other people kindness and respect. He wants me to exhibit self-control. Part of being led is to instill a level of self-control. And so when I exhibit self-control, that really does communicate to others that his leadership is over me is positive and it is a good representation of him. I am to speak highly of him to others. There's kind of this cultural expectation that you speak down about your spouse, and especially like women kind of talking about their husbands. More often than not, those conversations are not favorable to the husband's honor. And so I am not to engage in those kind of conversations. I am to speak highly of my husband. I am to speak highly of his leadership, of his authority, of his decisions. And that is the expectation, is that I don't speak down about him, that I don't complain about him, that I don't complain about his decisions or his leadership or what he's doing in our relationship. And now, that's not to say that if I had legitimate concerns, if I needed counsel from friends who I trust, who I have a very developed relationship with, if I needed input and counsel on something that felt like a very serious situation, I can go to those people privately. But to have casual conversations where I'm just kind of complaining about my husband, that's unacceptable. And I am to maintain a submissive attitude towards Coda, and I need to be receptive to his leadership in front of others. Having a submissive attitude towards him and being receptive to his leadership in front of others those are things that are a very real and very tangible expression of the level of respect that I have for him, and that is going to make him look good in front of others, and that is going to just bring him honor, and that is really what this is about. The last thing that is on our list of rules around respect is I'm not to tell Coda no. This doesn't mean that I can never disagree or never say that I don't want to do something, but it's more of that I don't use the word no flippantly. I was in a really bad habit of just saying no kind of jokingly or flippantly, just to kind of be a little like, a little sassy, I guess you would say. And it really bugged him. He really did not like it. And so he was like, this is not cute. This is not fun. This is not a joke. It really is disrespectful and you need to stop. And so that was really where this rule came from, is that he didn't want me to say no casually or flippantly as a joke, as a way to be cute or funny, because he was not receiving it that way. He was receiving it as disrespect, and he really needed me to stop. And so that's where this came from. So that's not to say that I can never tell him no, that I can never, if I'm really unable to fulfill a request, or if there is a complication, I can communicate that. He still doesn't want me just saying no without an explanation. He wants me to explain why, but he's open to me explaining why I have reservation or why I can't do something that he's asked me to do. Those instances should be few and far between, but he is open to hearing those things. But this rule really is more about just not blatantly telling him no when he deserves more from me than that. And those are all of our rules regarding respect. I know that it is pretty extensive. A lot of them overlap. A lot of them kind of repeat themselves, but that's okay. The reason we put our rule book together is just to keep those expectations kind of written down so that I know what's expected of me. Coda can go back and reference if something happens. He can see, do we already have a rule regarding that, or do we need to add a rule? Our rule book is very much a living document from the standpoint that as things happen, as things come up, it can be added to. It's not something that is just a one and done. That's the concrete, like it's never ever going to change. It is something that we add to periodically when we need to, but it is nice to have everything written down. And so that's why we put this all together. And it is nice to be able to go and reference, like, these are the things that I'm expected to do in regards to respect. And honestly, I fulfill these rules pretty well. It's just, every once in a while, I forget my place and need to be reminded and need to accept accountability for where I fall short. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that, and we will talk to you next time.